My name's Paul, and in this tutorial I'm going to be going over a very basic dailies workflow for bringing material into the software, grading it, and then rendering out a couple of deliverables. So when you start the daily software, this is typically what you're presented with. You get this job manager pop-up view here, and that's where we manage our jobs and our scenes in dailies. A job is basically a collection of scenes, and a scene is a collection of shots and the grade associated with those shots. And what we get in the job manager is three columns. On the left we get the host, which is a database host for the jobs and the scenes. The middle column is the jobs column. We can add and delete jobs from this cog menu here. And then to the right of that, scenes within the selected job. Now I'm just going to use this daily sample job, which I already created, and there's nothing in it, it's empty. So we're just going to create a new scene within that job. So we just click on the new scene button, like so. And we get this pop-up for a new scene. So we just got to give it a name, and we're going to be working on the day one material, so we'll call it day one. The next thing we'll do is we'll select a working format for our scene. And for the working format, we'll just pick a format which best represents the material we're going to be working with. So this is a red job, so I'm going to select my red 5K down here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is select a working color space for my scene. And what that is basically the grading space for my scene. Any shots that we bring into this scene will be converted into that space where all of our grading controls will be applied. Yeah, and then after that there's another transform applied for viewing, which I'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, we're going to select a grading space now, or working color space we call it. We're going to choose ACES Cineon Log, which is a nice wide gamut color space for grading in. So we'll just choose that, like so, and then we click on OK. Okay, you can see day one's appeared now in our scenes list there, so we can get rid of our job manager because it's opened already. Okay, and the next thing we need to do is actually bring some material into this scene. To do that, we're going to bring up another pop-up view. So we go to our views menu, which has got all of our different views in there, and we're going to bring up our sequence browser. And the sequence browser is where we browse the file system, and we locate footage for bringing into whatever scene we currently have open. So yeah, at the moment it's looking at local files, but all the material is actually on the external drive, which we've got plugged in here. So I'm just going to select, rather than local files, we'll come over here and we'll select that external drive that we've got plugged in. And then we're going to browse to the footage that we actually want to bring in. So we've got a couple of days worth on there, but we're going to be working on day one. So we'll select the day one folder. And then within that, we've got the camera and sound. Now, we could drill down into the camera directory, go through all the various subdirectories and find the material we're looking for. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the multi-insert tool to insert multiple files in the subdirectories of that camera folder there. So we just hit multi-insert. What will happen is it will scan those folders below the currently selected one. And you've got some basic filtering options here to filter by resolution, file type, and tape name. I'm only interested in the 5K stuff, so we'll take out the 4Ks, and we'll bring everything else in. So you can see we've got 32 sequences selected below that directory. So if we hit Insert, it brings up another little pop-up, which basically has spotted the fact that we're running off an external drive. So it's asking us to change the top-level container to volumes, which is where that drive actually is. And that's all good, so we'll just say, yeah, change the container, that's fine. Like so. Okay, so now you can see behind our sequence browser we've got some shots there, so we can get rid of that. We're happy with that. So basically, our scene has now got some shots in there. The next thing we're going to do is set up the viewing color space or display color space for this device. So to do that, we come over here. We've got this drop down. Now we're running on a single monitor configuration here, a single computer monitor with our display, our image on there, as well as our user interface. So we're going to select sRGB as our viewing color space. If you were using an external monitor, you probably want to be picking like Rec 7, something like Rec 709. But because I'm doing this screen capture on a single display device, we're going to select sRGB. So when we pick that, you can see that the image updates appropriately, because now we've got an additional color transformation going on from whatever our working color space is, which in this case is ACES Cineon Log, which is where we're going to be grading, to our display, which is sRGB. So now we've got a nice color pipeline set up from whatever our input material is being converted into our working color space for grading, and then finally another viewing color space transform being applied to the display device. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we'll actually go through some of these controls and review our shots that we've actually brought in. So the obvious stuff up here, we've got the player itself up here, and we've got various play controls for that. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. You can hit play, it's a toggle. You can jump through your shots, like so, previous, next shot. There's also some really useful keyboard shortcuts, because it's obviously painful going back to the mouse every time to play and jump through your shot list. So to the keyboard shortcuts that you're going to be using the most are probably X for next shot, Z for previous shot, and spacebar to toggle playback. So That's your basic play controls and navigation from the keyboard. The next thing we'll talk about are these two views down here. The first one is what we call the shots view, which basically gives you a list of all of the shots and selected columns of metadata here. You can see the columns themselves are resizable, so you can say, let's say for example, the clip there is being cropped off there. So what we can do is we can just resize that column out there, just so all the information fits on the screen. You can also customize what columns you have available to you. So if we come here, you click this button, you can see a big old list of columns. If we want to see the path, for example, you click path, and you can see now path has appeared there, like so. So you can view the path in your shots list. But we'll just get rid of that again. You can also use this view for editing metadata as well. So if I want to add a comment to this shot, I can just double click in there, just type the comment I want. I don't know, something like needs work. And that'll just update the metadata, the comment metadata for that shot with needs work. As well as that, you've also got what we call the metadata view over here, which shows all the metadata for the currently selected shot. So yeah, that gives you an overview. But the nice thing is with the shots view is much nicer because it gives you a view of lots of shots all at the same time, so you can just whiz through and get a feel for what the metadata is, or the metadata that you're interested in, and just review your shots that way. Okay, so once you've reviewed all your shots and set up the metadata appropriately, you probably want to get on and actually start grading them. So to do that, I'm going to move to what we call a different workspace for grading. A workspace is simply a screen layout. So this workspace is our player workspace, which contains our player at the top here, the shots list and the metadata view. But if we go to our views menu here at the bottom, we've got various different workspaces available to us. So this is the player workspace I mentioned, but we're going to use the grading workspace. So we've got other workspaces there pre-configured for performing tasks like audio sync, etc. But I'm going to use the grading workspace. Now, all of these workspaces are completely customizable. So if you want to change the window sizes, you can do so. You can change what views you actually have in there. So we can have custom views in there if you want to. And then you can save those back as your own workspaces and just recall them later. So if you don't like the screen layouts that we've given you, you can change them and customize them the way you want. So anyway, the grading workspace, what we're going to be using, just quickly talk you through the views. You can see we've still got the player controls. They're up in the top right now. We've got this thing here, which we call the cuts view, which is a really nice visual representation of your shots in your shots list. We've still got our navigation controls in there, so we've got Z and X. We can still jump backwards and forwards through those shots. Forgot to mention, actually, if you use left and right cursor, you can jump through the individual frames of a shot, so that's kind of useful too. You've got your scopes at the bottom there, but the main area we're going to be concentrating on is this top left area here, which is where you set up and edit your grades. Now, if you've used any of the additions plugins, it works in a very similar way to those. In that, we have over here, we have a layer view, and we add layers from this layer drop down like so. But before we start adding grading layers, the thing I'll mention is that each of our shots already has a single layer in there, layer 0. And that's where all of the information relating to the actual raw sequence itself lives. So in this case, if we just park on this shot here, you can see we've got our sequence selected within layer 0. It's got its R3D decode parameters. They're also in all of these things here are basically inside layer 0. But yeah, the sequence operator here will pull up all of the parameters associated with that sequence. So you can see the file name for that sequence. You can see what the format is itself, and also you can set the color space for that for that sequence. Now, the color space is currently set to automatic, and what that means is it'll use the metadata associated with that sequence to determine what color space to use and how to convert that sequence into the working color space or the grading color space that we're going to be grading in this case, ASUS Cineon log. So yeah, if you click on that, you can see, as I say, it's set to automatic, so it'll do all the work for you. But you can override that if you want to set it manually to red color too. You can do so. But it'll do it if you set it to automatic and the metadata is there. It will do a good job for you. In fact, we also have another thing while we're on color spaces. Just the last thing I'll mention is we have this thing called the color space journey. If you go to the views menu here and you select color space journey at the top, it tells you exactly what's going on at this point with regards to color spaces. So in this case, you can see that our sequence is set to automatic, as we just mentioned. You can see it's detected as red color 2, and it'll be converted into ASUS Cineon log in our scene for grading. So ASUS Cineon log, and then finally there's an additional conversion for display to our viewing color space, which is sRGB. You can also see it's been converted with a DRT. Whenever you go from a scene to a display color space, you have the option to apply DRT, and in this case, it's applying ASUS RRT. And if you go to the views scene settings, you can actually set what DRT to use. So if we go to where is it, format and color, there you go. You can see there's the DRT being applied from our working color space to our display color space. Okay, so yeah, if you're ever in doubt of what's going on color space wise, just go to the color space journey. It will tell you exactly what's going on, and yeah, hopefully it'll clear things up for you. Okay, so let's actually get back to grading this shot. So to add a grade layer to the shot, we'll come back to our layers drop down here, and we're just going to hit the plus key like so. And you'll see over here now we not only have layer 0, which has our sequence information, and we have layer 1, which is a grading layer. Now, within that grading layer, we have several operators available to us: film grade, video grade, curve grade, etc. And over here, we have the parameters associated with the selection within the layer. So I've got my film grade selected. So these are my film grade controls. As well as being able to add and remove layers from this drop down, we also have keyboard shortcuts because it's quite a common operation. You're going to be doing it a lot, so you don't have to keep going back to that menu. If you want to add a primary layer, you can press P, and that'll add a new primary layer on there. You can see them in the layers view. And if you want to delete the currently selected layer, Shift P, so that gets rid of layers that you've added. Okay, so let's actually grade this a bit. So we've got a film grade on there already. Let's select a more interesting frame, and we're just going to add a bit of exposure to that, like so. Just lift the exposure. Okay, so happy enough with that grade. Now, a lot of the time, you're going to be wanting to reuse grades within the current shot list on different shots. So that's very easy as well. So we've got a grade on this shot. Let's use the same grade on the next shot. So we just jump to the next shot. We'll just scrub into it. And yeah, to actually apply the grade from the previous shot, I use what we call the dark blue square, or DBS. The DBS is basically a grade source. So you can move the DBS onto another shot, use that as a grade source, and apply it to the current shot. So to move the DBS around, it's just left click. So you just left click on the different thumbnails, and that moves the DBS onto that thumbnail as a potential grade source. So we're going to select the previous shot, and all I'm going to do, this shot is currently ungraded, DBS on the previous shot, I just hit apply, and that moves or copies the grade from the DBS shot onto the current shot. So hit apply, and there you see we've got the exposure change on there, like so. It's actually as well as being able to use the mouse to move the DBS around, we've added some keyboard shortcuts as well for that to make it easy and quick to do. So if I just Command Z to undo that change, what we can do is we can use the less than or greater than keyboard controls here, and that will move the DBS around in the shots list in the cuts view, like so. So you can move the DBS independently of the cursor position, which is Z and X. I can move it onto the previous shot, like so. And we have some other interesting keyboard shortcuts as well when it comes to the DBS. We have, if you use the semicolon key, if you press that down, you can actually just view the shot in the player that the DBS is currently parked on, like so. So you can have a look at that grade that you're proposing to apply to the current shot. If you want to try that shot out, try that grade out on the current shot, you just use the slash key, and that'll just try that grade out temporarily without actually applying it. So if you want to see how it looks, and if you like the look of that, then you can use the apostrophe key there, like so, and that'll apply that grade from the DBS to the current cursor position. So again, if you want to copy grades around from the shots list from one shot to another, you don't have to keep going back to the mouse to do that. You can just do it using keyboard shortcuts. As well as copying grades around in the shot list itself, we also have this really other useful area, this other view, which is what we call the gallery down here. And you can see it's already got a bunch of thumbnails in there, because what the gallery is that it's a really handy place for saving grades away for recalling later onto different shots or even different scenes. So we've already got some grades in there, but we're going to grab a new one. So let's just grab this grade that we've got, this exposure change grade, to the gallery. You can see there's a grab button here, and that'll grab whatever you're parked in the cuts view into the gallery and save that there, like so. And in terms of recalling grades from the gallery, it works very, very similar way to recalling other shots in the cuts view here. So if I want to apply a grade from the gallery to this particular shot, all I do is I left click on the thumbnail here, and that'll jump the DBS down into the gallery. So we can select the grade from here, use that one again, and then we can just hit apply, and that'll apply that grade from the gallery to our shot in our cuts view here, like so. So yeah, that's a really another really useful way of saving and recalling grades. You can also apply grades to multiple shots at the same time if you want to, so you don't have to apply and copy grades around individually. You can do it in batches. So let me give you an example. So let's go to the next bunch of shots. So we've got 4 shots in a row here that we want to apply a grade to in one hit from. Let's apply them from the gallery again. So we're going to use this grade that we've got. let's apply that grade to all 4 shots here at the same time. So actually it's 5 shots. So to do that, we need to select those as destinations for our apply. And the way we do that is we just use command click. And when you do a command click, you see we get this red square selection. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we select the 5 shots that we want to apply the grade to using the command click. Then we come back to our shot down here to make sure it's got the DBSs on there. So we left click on that. So now we've got our source set up, our DBS down here, our destination of our 5 shots here, like so. And then when we hit apply, you'll see the thumbnails of all 5 of those lighten up, and because the same grade has now been applied to all 5 of those shots in one hit. And I could have done the same thing from a different shot in the cuts view in the existing shots list if I wanted to, just by moving the DBS into there as a source instead. So the next thing we're going to do here is just render out a couple of deliverables from our shots list. So what we're going to do is render out a couple of HD deliverables, one with burn-in and one without burn-in. So first of all, we're going to select the format that we're going to actually render out to. We want to render out to HD rather than 5K. So we want to select HD as our view format to see what it's going to look like. But as you can see, we don't have an option there to do that currently, and that's because we don't have a mapping from 5K to HD, and that's a spatial mapping. So what we'll do is we'll just add one now. So very easy to do. We come up here to our formats window in the Baselight Dailies menu. You select there. And there you can see a list of all your formats. So we've already got the red format selected. And what we want to do, there's a couple of tabs here, and we want to select the mappings tab, which is already selected. Excuse me. And we're just going to create a mapping to our HD format that we're actually going to render our deliverables to. So what we do is we select new, and then we just select the format we're going to be mapping to, which as we know is HD, what is it, 1920 1080 24p, like so, and we add a mapping. So now we've got a mapping added. You've got options to how you actually want to map from between the two. You can position it and scale it appropriately, but it'll do a pretty good job for you of fitting it either inside or outside, depending on what you select here. But we'll just leave it to inside for now. Okay, so that gives us a basic default mapping, which is all good. So we can save that and close our formats window. Okay, so now if we go back to our viewing formats option here, we can select HD as our viewing format to see what it's going to look like when it converts from Red 5K to HD. So you can see that the format's changed there, and that's our basic mapping to HD there. As I say, you can tune that in the formats window if you want. So now we know we've got a decent mapping there. We said we're going to do a deliverable with burn-in and without. So what we'll do is to have a look at what the burn-ins are going to look like. We'll enable the burn-ins on the current display here in the player. So to do that, yeah, you've got some cursor options here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the burn-ins option to my cursors there, to my cursor options. So we select burn-ins. And if you have a look now down here, and we can make this window bigger, obviously, if we want to. Burn-ins currently set to none. So what we'll do is we select that, and you can see we've got a couple of default burn-ins in there, data dailies burn-in and film dailies. You can add a new custom burn-in if you want. If I select data dailies, you can see we've got various different overlays there, metadata overlays. You can see there's an option there next to it, edit. So if you hit that, you can change that burn-in and tweak the positions of all the various bits of metadata. And as I say, you can add your own custom burn-ins if you want, just by going back to this menu saying add new burn-in, and then when you right-click over here, actually, if we go back to edit, I'll show you. If you right-click here, you can add various different types of burn into your display there and position them appropriately where you want. So, okay, so let's turn off the edit option. So data dailies will be the burn-in we're going to use, this one here. So, yeah, okay, so let's actually set our renders up at this point. So to start rendering our deliverables, what we need to do is come over here and bring up our render panel. Okay, so first thing we need to do is tell it what frames we want to render. So we don't want to render all the frames, we just want to render the 5 red square graded shots, the selected shots there. So to do that, we deselect this option here, and we have an additional drop down now, which lets us say what frames we want to render. So we want to render all the frames of the selected shots, so we pick that. Next thing we do is to pick the file types we want to render. So we're going to be rendering movies, so we select that. Next thing is the file type. We've got various options, QuickTime, etc. So we'll leave it at MXF, that's all good. And then we can fine-tune the options for that particular render using this drop-down here. So if you click that, you get various options available to bring up. So we're going to be setting the output format, we're going to be setting the output color space, and we're also going to be setting the burn-in as well. So let's set those up. So output format, we want to be HD. Color space is going to be, because we're going to be delivering to an editor who's running on an external SDI monitor, we'll set the output color space to be Rec 709 video, and that means that it will convert from the grading color space into Rec 709 video when it actually does the render out, rather than sRGB, which is the current viewing color space. So normally, if we were running on a Rec 709 monitor, here as well, then the viewing color space would be Rec 709 as well. But we've been through that. So yeah, the deliverable itself is going to be Rec 709 for the editor. And finally, we'll set the burn-in to none, because there's 2 deliverables. First one won't have burn-in, so we'll leave that at the default. Okay, so now we've got to set up where those files are going to be dropped to. So we've got the default here is slash and then images 1 and %j, which is the job name, and then %s substitution, which is the scene name. What we'll do actually is we'll have 2 directories below the job, one called clean. So the first deliverable will render out to a clean directory, like so, and we'll render the other ones out to a burn-in directory. So, okay, that's set up nicely. Next thing we do is we want to actually, at the moment it's set up to actually render 1 long MXF from those 5 rendered shots, which is not what we want. We want to actually render out 5 individual MXFs corresponding to the original R3D files. So to do that, what we do is if we turn on this input file name option, what it means is that every time it detects a change in input file name, it'll actually generate a whole new MXF file, which is good. Still got the name in there, day 1, and you can see that's the first file here has got day 1 appended to it rather than the actual original name, which we don't want, so we'll just take that off, like so. And so yeah, this first file here tells us exactly what the first file that's going to be rendered is going to be, so we can check it's okay. So images 1, daily sample job, then clean, then day 1, and the file name below that. Last thing we'll do is we'll select an appropriate DNX HD codec, like so, and that's our first deliverable setup. So now what we'll do is we'll set the second one up with burn-ins. So it's very easy. Once you've set the first one up, we can just take a copy of it using this plus key here. You can see it's copy of untitled. And all the settings are the same, so we can just tweak them. So basically, we'll just add the burn-in to the second one, change the directory. So we'll take clean out and insert a different directory in there called burn-in, like so, same codec, etc. So that's all good. And now we can actually submit that render to our render queue. So yeah, if we just hit submit render, it will submit a single render job with 2 deliverables in it, two render deliverables. So hit that, submit that to the queue. You can name it if you want to optionally, and you can see that the render queue monitor will pop up now, and it says that that particular render job is in process. It's started to pre-render, it's made directories, and off it goes on its merry way, actually rendering that. You can click on it to monitor the progress of that, if you want to. And what's quite nice is we can get rid of that, and it will render those two deliverables in the background, and we can carry on creating another job if we want to, and carry on working on something different. What's quite nice actually is if you submit a single render job with multiple deliverables in there, it will try and optimize that render as best it can. So in this particular example where we have R3D files, it'll only decode. For both of those deliverables, it'll only do the decode once, so it'll just decode the frame once and then split the renders off into 2, one with burn-ins and one without, to generate the 2 MXF files. So it tries to optimize the renders within that single render job. Okay, so I think that covers most of the basics of bringing stuff in, grading, and rendering out again. Hopefully it's been helpful to you. We've got plenty of tutorials on our website anyway, which cover more detailed grading. If you want to go in there and have a look at those, feel free at the Filmlight website. Yeah, so as I say, I hope you've enjoyed it, and yeah, thanks a lot for listening.